Welcome to this exciting video interview where we have the pleasure of exploring the dynamic world of a chef and a DJ at the same moment. Welcome to the show, Shehan.
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So could you give us a little bit of insight on who you are, what you're doing these days?
Okay, so I am a chef. I've been a chef for the past 10 years. I'm based in Melbourne, but I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, and so all my heritage, everything comes from here, and everything that I do also has some sort of attachment to Sri Lanka, even though I'm there.
Okay.
And yeah, and from recently I've also taken up DJing, so I've been trying to balance both at the same time.
Okay,
And that's basically what I've been doing for the past few years now.
that's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you discover your passion for both cooking and DJing at the same moment?
So the cooking thing, I think it goes way back to when I was a kid. When a lot of people ask me that question, it's taken me at least like until now to actually realize what got me into cooking. And it goes back way, like when I used to be dropped off at my grandmother's place. My grandmother would always tell my parents that I would just be in the kitchen the whole time, even though I couldn't see much. I would just be a kid, but I would get on top of a bench and just watch what my grandmother's doing. And I really didn't want to leave the kitchen. So I think it starts from back then, and then I think when I was around 19, 20, like most Sri Lankan like teenagers or kids who leave school, my parents asked me to choose what I wanted to do, and this thing came up, the whole cooking thing, because at the same time was when MasterChef Australia was being aired in Sri Lanka, so I would watch that every night before I went to sleep, and that kind of inspired me in a way. But yeah, I think since I was a kid, I was always passionate about food, and food is like what I wanted to do with myself in the future, and I'm lucky that it worked out well for me.
Okay.
DJing was something that I used to listen to this underground music to get me motivated for work, because going into work inside a kitchen where it's quite a hectic environment, I needed to motivate myself going into that, like waking up in the morning, and music was something that I used to listen to, was always interested in music. And during COVID, I was stuck in a house with 4 really good DJs in Melbourne who are also Sri Lankans, who are like really top DJs in Melbourne, and I had no choice but to learn how to DJ. And that's where my whole DJing thing started, because in Melbourne we were locked up from the whole world. We were locked up for the longest time, and during 2021 I started learning how to play, and I've been playing ever since. So
That's nice. Okay, so how do you manage your time? You cook, you DJ, how do you manage it?
that is probably the most challenging part. With time is obviously the most challenging part at this stage of my life. I know it's going to get busier and busier. Like I give most of my time, I would say 90% of my time for cooking, and the rest for DJing, I would say. But this trip that I've done in Sri Lanka for the past, I would say 1.5 months, I've done more DJ gigs than cooking, because cooking gigs can take a little bit more of time and preparation. DJing gigs also take a lot of preparation and time, but I've found a way to balance both of them. I would go cook the whole day and then come in the night and then try to prepare for my sets. So I mean, as long as you like something that you do, you can easily balance things, and you can put in extra time, and you don't feel tired when you're doing what you love.
That's true.
Yeah.
You always got to do what you love.
Exactly. That's something that I always tell a lot of people, like, you need to find something that you love. I know a lot of people do not find that passion, and they find it very later on in life, which is still fine, but if you always try to keep looking for that passion, I was lucky that I found it like very early on in my life, and it does not work that way for everyone, which is still fine. But you need to start looking for what pushes you, what wakes you up in the morning, what keeps you happy, and that in return you don't feel like there's a lot going on. You feel like you're managing fine with time. So.
So coming back to the culinary side, so
Yeah.
how would you define your culinary type? Like what kind of dishes do you master in?
So, I'd like to say that I have learned, or I could do almost anything when it comes to mastering. Right now, what I'm going into is modernizing Sri Lankan cuisine. This is not something that I have been doing for a while. When I got to Australia, I've been working with Greek food, Turkish food, French, Italian, all those stuff, including desserts and stuff like that. But right now, I feel like I need to do something with my heritage, my own culture, and my own food, and I'm trying to focus on Sri Lankan ingredients rather than Sri Lankan food, and I'm trying to innovate and create new dishes for Sri Lanka, for myself, and for our food, just trying to add new things into our culture, basically. So that's basically the style of food that I'm going towards. And if I had to put a name for it, it would be modern Sri Lankan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you get motivated to get with all these ideas? So what is your daily motivation?
Daily motivation is, I would, something that keeps me going is, I want to be the first to do something, to be the first to try and modernize Sri Lankan food to that extent, or to be the first to try and even inspire an individual. That inspiration, if I can inspire another human being or another Sri Lankan to be a good chef, that's something that keeps me motivated, and that's something that goes way beyond money for me, way beyond business, way beyond anything. And that's the reason why I'm here in Sri Lanka, is to try and inspire people, inspire young chefs in Sri Lanka, and try to do these events and certain things wherever it may be, whichever hotel it may be. It does not matter, as long as I'm in the kitchen, try and basically teaching people what to do, try to teach people good work ethic at the same time, and not be so laid back as Sri Lankans, to try and get our hands on and dirty, and that's something that keeps me motivated as well.
That's good. Okay, so the technology is increasing and developing day by day. So how do you use the modern technology in your kitchen?
Technology and equipment is very important. As far as equipment goes, I always tell this to my young chefs, that without equipment we are nothing. Like there are certain things that we may not be able to do without any equipment in kitchen. Especially if you're doing one dish just to try it out, you may not need equipment. But in a restaurant, if you're doing if you're serving many people, then definitely you need equipment, you need new technology, and that really helps with modern cuisine as well. But as a chef, end of the day, you need to be creative and innovative, and use whatever that's there in the kitchen, and try and come up with a menu based on what has been given to you. Sometimes most business owners may not be able to afford good equipment, or expensive equipment, so you just need to be able to use what you have, and try and turn that into a special product.
Okay, so you have prepared plenty of dishes in different tastes and other things. So what was your favorite experience when you're cooking for someone, or what is your favorite experience in the kitchen?
My most favorite experience I've had in terms of an event, I would say was when I traveled to Sri Lanka on tour with a chef called George Colombaris. Many people may know who he is. He was the first Australian Master Chef judge.
Okay.
One of the reasons why Australian Master Chef is where it is right now is also because of him. He was my first boss in Sri Lanka. He was invited to come to Sri Lanka on a tour, and then he brought me along with him. And that's an event that really put me on the map and really showed even people like my parents that I was meant to do this, and that I was not just in Australia, messing around.
No.
And yeah, because a lot of people may not know this, but I was a dropout in Australia. I dropped out because these people, when I was working for George Colombo, they offered me a sponsorship for my visa.
Okay.
And as a result, I dropped out of school. And like any Sri Lankan parent, they were not very happy of me dropping out. But that dropout was the reason why I had come this far in my career. And as a result, as a reward, he toured with me in Sri Lanka, and that was one of the biggest highlights up to date. And there's many more, but I would say if I had to choose one, that's probably the one that I would choose.
There's an amazing opportunity for you as well. So.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So my last question for you is, if someone is willing to pursue a career through becoming a chef or any other, who is someone trying to figure out what the path they want to choose, what would your advice be for them?
My main advice would be getting that foundation is very important. As like our young generation that we get right now, they're very interested, but it's also driven by a lot of TV, a lot of social media, and the need to be famous can be sometimes seen as the number one priority, but that shouldn't be the case. The number one priority should be getting that really good foundation, putting your head down, working really hard, and end of the day, it's both teaching and being in the kitchen is based on skill. And to get that skill, you need to put in a lot of hours into that. You need to put in like as much as you can into that before you get to the stage where you can be on TV, where you can, be famous or even money wise. So first part is don't think about the money, don't think about fame. It all needs to start from working really hard.
So you have to set the ground first, and
you
then
have to
come
set the ground first. Yeah, that's the most important thing. Otherwise, I don't think any good chef or good DJ would be where they are right now if they haven't put in that hard work.
Yeah, true.
And good attitude takes you a really long way. That's something that we as senior chefs, we look at young chefs, and if there's a person who has great attitude, we will invest our time with those people. You don't need to have skill, you don't need to have anything, just good attitude when you walk into the place, good work ethic takes you a long way.
Right. That's true. Okay, thank you so much, Shehan, for joining today's show.
No,
It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you everyone here.